Hey, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And I'm an evolutionary astrologer and also a channel and energy worker and a medium. Um, Most of my stuff to read about and to explore is on tdjacobs.com. And then healingsuicide.com is a site that tells a story about soul and its multi-life journey and gives tips and tricks on how to deal with difficult emotions that might make us feel despair or lose hope or feel hopeless. So my first site is more about the business. Second site's more about a public service announcement of a sort, with some channel material to help you understand the bigger picture. Um, as we're in lockdown and hearing about people passing away and having economic crisis and stuff, so I'm thinking I'd like to do some videos focusing on astrology topics so that I don't want to be weird, but so that you can entertain yourself and learn something, as you pass time if you're not engaged in a lot of work or service or something. But anyway, so this video is on the 10th house. I don't know if I'll call it living in the 10th house or something, but secrets of the 10th house. But I want to offer you a perspective regarding all the parts of life that fit in the 10th house. I've done this. There's a video on the deeper meaning of the 8th house. There's a SoundCloud audio thing on keys to the 11th house. That's what I'm trying to figure out a clever title for it. And I'm just kind of randomly going around the wheel to give you some different perspectives. So first of all, houses are not the same things as signs and planets. A planet is the part of your psyche that seeks expression. So in this case, with this archetype, Saturn, 10th house Capricorn, Saturn is a part of you that needs to become mature, that needs to become competent and authoritative. That part of your psyche that is growing up over time, maturing, right, developing something valuable, that part of you that has that motivation, that thing. Separately, any planet working through the lens of Capricorn explores being ambitious and building something. So a different part of your psyche through the lens of Capricorn, right? And the 10th house contains all the parts of life in which we express ambition, we work, we build something, all the parts of life. So if you're studying astrology, you have heard the 10th house is about work and career. And over the last, I don't know, few months, 6 months or something, I've been asking clients and students this particular kind of question, which is a set of 3 questions in a certain order, which kind of leads, I think, really reveals the terrain of the 10th house and leads into really effectively evaluating, the 10th house and what our options are and what's really going on there. And I am thinking, I was just teaching my monthly subscribers a class on Saturn and Aquarius. And so this might be helpful now as Saturn has just changed signs from the sign of Capricorn, working through the lens of productivity and building something to Aquarius, where we're looking forward. And I think of Capricorn as, is what I'm doing right now efficient and worthwhile? And a planet working through the lens of Aquarius says, is what I'm doing right now building a future I want to live in? So I'm kind of offering you this in case you're thinking about maturity and work and responsibility in different ways. Okay, so you've heard it's about career and work or job, right? Here's where I want to start with this. Question number 1 of 3. What do you want to see more of in your community or more of in the world, but scale is relative? What do you want to see more of in the world? What do you think your community is missing or doesn't have enough of that's worthwhile? That's number 1. Number 2, are you now the kind of person who could bring that, or could you through hard work and sacrifice become such a person? Number 3, if the answer to number 2 is yes, is that what you want? Do you want it? So question number 1, what do you think your community needs more of, gets to this thing about public service, which I think is quite easy to forget when it comes to 10th house living. The desire to bring something of value to the world. All the behaviors and activities and paths of living that involve that. Number two, are you now competent, or could you become somebody who's competent to be that kind of influence in the world? That covers the work ethic, the idea of responsibility, the idea of forging over time yourself into somebody who can do something valuable, right? And number three, if the answer to number two is yes, do you want it? That covers ambition and desire. So if you think about those three kind of buckets or containers for life in the 10th house or life regarding Saturnian living, you realize that some people do things that they don't want to do, but they might be very good at it, right? They might not have answered question number three, do I want it, right? Some people might try to do things in the world to make the world better with question number one, but not be competent or not have put in years to become good at something. I don't mean any of this with criticism at all, but just be aware of really, I believe really effective living in the 10th house requires answering each of those questions in order. So for example, there are things that I'm good at doing that I don't want to do. You too. There are things you're maybe good at doing. So that, if you're doing something you want to do, you've gone through all three questions, or at least gotten to the third question. So regarding work and career and how we can get into these patterns of viewing things, sometimes in astrology, through kind of a black and white lens, where let's say I go to an astrologer and I say, help me understand myself better. And that astrologer says, well, you have the sign of Cancer on the cusp of your 10th house, on your midheaven. So the start of your 10th house is in the sign of Cancer. So the kind of work you might be drawn to do in the world is of a nurturing nature. That person might say, you should help people, or you should feed people, or nurse, right? Somehow help people. I had an astrology teacher once talk about like shepherding a community, Cancer 10th house, like in a gentle way, being a leader in a community, something like that. But what I want to get to is an astrologer might say to you, here are three ideas. But what I want you to realize is there are limitless ideas. If you go through the process of those questions, you'll identify several things that are true about you. And then I want you to remember that there's no black and white one answer that you should do. I think this is, when we're looking for guidance from astrology, I just think about some of the books where it's like, your midheaven, finding your path in life or something, and how it might spell out something. You might, get a specific idea in your head. But that's why I like to lead with the idea or the inspiration of public service. What do I think my world needs more of? So anyway, I just did a video recently about not being too specific, or I said something like avoiding too much specificity in astrology, and the idea being really understanding the themes related to different chart signatures. Like if you see my Cancerian midheaven, and you might say something like, if you were being too specific, you might say, oh, well, maybe you'll work in restaurants. I did, but it's not what I wanted, right? I did. For 2 years, I worked in restaurants right out of college. I didn't want to be in an office. I wanted where you could open a window or go outside and move around and not have like fluorescent lights, and that was my motivation. So I got involved in cooking for a couple of years until I couldn't do it anymore. Because frankly, I couldn't cut up animal carcasses. My Neptune was being awakened, and I was having this energetic thing happen, and I couldn't handle the energy of the death. It was too sensitive. So that's why I stopped cooking, by the way. Anyway, but I did do that, right? It turns out my sister's a caterer. So it's in my family. It's in my space, right? It's in my family. My South Node's in Cancer in the 10th too. So people in my family have like Cancerian 10th house things going on too. But the point is, don't be too specific, but understand the themes. So regarding my 10th house, for example, if I have Cancer on the cusp, and then of course part of Leo is in that part too. So what do I want to see more of in the world? Well, I want people to deal with their emotions in more effective ways. There's Cancer. So what that might look like, there are limitless possibilities. That's part of the key. So if you say to me, if I'm your client and you say to me, well, you might really enjoy or feel really good, really in alignment with yourself if you nurture other people. That's true. But I got to find the right way for me to find that path. Again, question number one, what do I want to see more of in the world? Be that person, do I want to? So that's really the thing about the 10th house. And a lot of people in our world may find themselves doing things they don't really love doing. I noticed a few years ago when Saturn, transiting Saturn in late Sagittarius, stationed on the galactic center, 28-ish degrees Sagittarius, a lot of people started feeling this intuitive sense, like basically galactic center emits vibrations of higher truth, and Saturn was stationing on it. And so people were saying, wait a minute, what I'm doing for a living doesn't work for me, or this isn't my truth, or this isn't who I really am, or this isn't my future. And that sense of I want to change what I'm doing in the world, right? And then of course Saturn went into Capricorn, and we've had, some of us may have been distracted by the Pluto-Saturn conjunction for a while. And that idea is asking us to be empowered about our goals, including Saturn energy, overcoming fear of owning with authority what we're good at, but also realistically assessing what we need to improve without judgment and shame. Right? I have some videos about that, a series of 3 or 4 videos. I think maybe 3 updates plus a long video about it, if you're curious about how I see that. But now Saturn has just entered Aquarius for the first time. It'll station May 11th, and then I think in late September or something, it goes back into Capricorn for until late December or maybe. But anyway, the Saturn in Aquarius bit then says, I need to innovate. My Saturn needs to innovate. I need to separate from convention. I need to do something new. So anyway, I'll just invite you to play with these questions. What do I want to see more of in the world? And at that stage of the inquiry, it doesn't matter what you are able to do. Like, if you say, what do I want to see more of in the world? And part of you says this, but I could never do that. Your job is to give yourself permission to at least have a vision, like acknowledge truthfully, realistically, what you want to see more of in your community. What do you think the world needs more of? As I ask this question to some people, they're very clear. And some other people are not so clear because a part of them may be habituated to doubting that they have the ability, or they'll have the freedom, or they'll be able to deliver or measure up and succeed. But in step number 1, I'll just break it down and be really clear, in case it's helpful for you, or working with the charts you work with and people you work with. It doesn't matter if you can do it. It doesn't matter if you have a certain level of education or a certain kind of education. What do you want to see more of in your community? And I'm talking about quality of experience. Like, it could be something like, I don't know. Like, it could be very specific or broad. I'm thinking like I want to see more people adopting rescue animals. That's pretty specific, right? But that's also kind of a thematic approach or theme that you can approach, which is, I want to see more people stepping up with compassionate leadership or something like that. So it can be kind of specific, but don't let it be too specific. But the theme, the quality of experience, what kind of thing, what kind of energy, what kind of behavior, what kind of thing, what kind of structure, what kind of ethos, what kind of energy would I like to see more of in my community? And you don't have to know how to do it. That's part of the key of step number 1. So it's not really about brainstorming, but it's about allowing yourself to be honest with what you assess the world could need more of, or could use more of, what you perceive the world needs more of. Most people will have a broad theme when they start. Most people will not say, we need more, I don't know, about like a pet adoption or rescuing animals. We need more, and it'll be something super specific. Most people won't say that. They'll say something like more kindness toward animals or more, rescue. They'll say something that's a little more broad, and that's where most of us come to, and that's where most of us begin with it. So in that first question, only the facts. If parts of you have doubts, or even, if you have a regret that you didn't pursue an educational opportunity or didn't seize something or didn't measure up to some standard in the past, if you have that kind of doubt, it would reveal itself in this kind of inquiry. So it doesn't matter if you're able to do it in question number one. What would I like to, what quality of experience or what thing that's human, or what do I want to see more of in my community or the world? Okay, that's number one. And anything can be said. Again, if it's too specific, that gets harder, but any quality of experience. You want people to be kinder to each other? Do you want people to have the right to vote and not be limited by political garbage of voter intimidation and all that kind of crap, restriction? Do you want more access to blah 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 for this community? Whatever it is, there's a theme. Give yourself the wisdom in step number one here. Question number one is give yourself permission to own that that's what you want to see more of. Okay, doesn't matter if you can do it, whatever. Number two, am I now a person who could bring that to the world, or could I become such a person through hard work, sacrifice, and investment of time and energy? So that will also bring up any judgments from the past about if you're qualified or competent or respectable, or if you perceive others believe you are respectable or competent or responsible. So let's say, could I bring that to the world now? Be honest, be realistic, and don't judge yourself if the answer is no, or if the answer is, well, I would be if I had only done that thing 10 years ago, right? Healthy Saturn energy here is important. In other words, turning the inner judge into an inner mentor or helpful guide or coach. Like if you're my astrology student and I say the same thing to you every week over and over and over again and you never grasp it, I don't get angry with you and I don't judge you. What I'll do, that's negative Saturn, the judgment, the anger, the impatience. I have a strong Uranus energy, I have a strong Saturn energy. But why do I want to make you, why do I want to vilify you or make you wrong? Because there's something happening in your mind that's creating this thing over and over again, this error or this forgetting. So what I'll do is I'll try to figure out how you learn. And then I'll try to understand where the thought speed bump happens in your brain and in your process. So that Saturn, okay, it's not correct. Let's figure out how to help you make it correct. That's healthy Saturn. So that's important for you to do that. If you want more info on that, and I'll link to it in the description, but my Saturn Returns book, it's of course obviously about Saturn Returns, but the intro material and then the tenor of the whole book is really geared toward transforming the inner judge and critic into a helpful mentor, which so many people need. If you haven't had a healthy model of Saturnian helpfulness, you need to become your own version of it. You may or may not have Saturn retrograde in your chart. Sometimes that means that. You have to figure out Saturn on your own when you have Saturn retrograde. But so in question number two, could I now bring that? Part of you might say no because blah, 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 or I always mess things up, or I'm never good enough, right? You got to deal with that crap. The other part of the question is, or could I, through hard work and sacrifice and investment, could I become such a person who could bring that? Well, that brings up if you're willing to give yourself permission to be confident that you can improve things. Again, inner healthy Saturn is required. I don't know how to do it, but the thing really matters to me. So could I become somebody who could help that? Let me find out. Or maybe, okay. And it doesn't matter at this stage if it's what you want. It's about you estimating your potential and understanding your value. Then number 3, do I want it? Okay, now this is where we get into, like I said, ambition and desire. And I think that some examples that we see in our world of 10th house living, it's about the desire for power, influence, and status, right? The desire for the ability to, I don't know, influence others or control them, or control a group of people or a company or something, right? Sometimes we have those examples, so we might be sometimes turned off by ambition. So let me frame ambition for you. You have an idea, you have an inspiration to make it happen, and you really want to see it happen. That's it, that's ambition. So I'm encouraging everyone to own their ambitions, but recognize that they don't have to look like any particular example you've already seen. Again, what do you want to see more of in your community? What do you think the world needs more of? See, this is where it leads to the ambition thing. But if you just look at, well, this is what I do for a job, and these are the possibilities for either advancement or lateral moves or whatever. If you just look at that structure, like of the reality of your 10th house living, you might not see how to move beyond it or how to create something that you really want to do. But if you always start with, what do I want to see more of in my community, or what do I think the world or my community needs more of, that gives you a different starting place. It's not about a job. So it's not about a job you do have, or a job you want, or you used to have, or a job you could have. It's not about that. The reality of a job would come later. Okay, so the ambition thing, don't get turned off to your own dreams, would be one way to say it, because some people are power hungry. You can bring something to the world and develop power, self-confidence, and you don't have to fulfill some negative examples. So own what you want to see more of in the world. Be realistic and assess if you can do it. Anyway, this is the secret of the 10th house. And do you want it? Because there are going to be things that you are or could be good at that you don't want to do for a living or don't want to do on a regular basis, even as volunteer work. Things that you might be really good at, you don't want to do. Like I said earlier, we all might have these examples. Like in a certain way, I worked for years as an administrative and executive assistant. In some ways I was good at it, in other ways I wasn't, but I could become better at it. I don't want to do it. I also worked for a short time, well, several years in data management, managing databases to collect data and track data and analyze trends and things like that. That lit me up. I was really good at that, and I wanted to do it. And then all this astrology stuff happened, and I dropped it essentially. So just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it. So then let's think about the idea of public service. Maybe you're aware that something you do well is something that a community needs. Well, maybe you negotiate and navigate, having certain time frames or doing certain things for a certain amount of time and then moving on, or sharing time or going back and forth. None of this stuff needs to be black and white is what I'm saying. I think about, somebody who's like, let's say somebody's learning some metaphysical thing or wants to do tarot readings or astrology readings or in channeling or something. That person has a day job is how we might say it. For years I had a day job before I started doing this full time. And some people will resist being committed to the day job because they want to do something else, right? Or being committed or being all on board. And when I was in that position, for some of that time, I was really distracted. I even had bosses come to me at one job. There were two bosses and came to me and said, "You don't want to be here. You don't want to do this." And I said, "Oh no, I totally do." Because I don't want to be that person who was wasting time, right? But I was afraid of going into this work full time. So I applied myself every day with gusto for 2 weeks and realized they were right. And I felt like a fraud. I felt like a fraud because I was actually doing my job 100%. So I put in my notice and I left. Anyway, So I didn't want to do it, right? So therefore, anyway. So the point is that you might realize something you do well, the community really does need. Well, you don't have to keep doing it. Like, let's say down the road, I say, I don't want to do this work anymore. But part of me just wants to write novels and observe the world and explore the world of imagination, right? Maybe someday I'll say, oh, talking to people all the time or teaching or repeating myself all the time, I just want to write books. I just want to write my novels. Somebody might say to me, but that work is so important. Or somebody in my community who are my, peer might say, but we rely on you, or it's been so helpful, please don't stop totally, or that's confusing, why would you stop doing it? You help people. So that's sometimes part of the evolutionary process. Do you want it? So like for me in this work, what do I want to see more of in the world? I want more understanding. I want people to like each other better. I want less conflict and less misunderstanding, fewer stereotypes, less pigeonholing, right? I want people to be more connected in humane ways where people don't get vilified and abused, all these things, right? That's what I want. Am I now, or could I become the kind of person who could bring that? And in a certain way, I am that kind of person now. And I'm bringing it. Could I become a better version of that? Yeah, of course I could. I always could. Number three, do I want it? Right now, the answer is yes. So as I'm thinking about this, I want to put your attention on the idea of in the 10th house, it can be about a community, a workplace, right? It can be something in the world, right? A group, right? Or your community. We think of groups often in the 11th house, but I'd say groups in the 11th house have to do with shared values and shared vision and shared goals, co-creating a future we mutually want to live in. The 10th house groups is like what's actually existing right now. So therefore, work structures, things in the world, community groups in certain ways. And the 11th house can have volunteer work as a humanitarian altruistic mission. The 10th house can have volunteer work for a different reason. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like school maintenance, like filling in gaps or something like that, as opposed to moving ahead in the 11th house. But anyway, so so the idea of responsibility, right? Some people living a 10th house a 10th house thing are responsible for other people or for community or for work things. Business owners or people in hierarchical structures. So one of the things about the 10th house is also exploring the realities of responsibility. Some people find themselves, I don't know if the right phrase for it would be locked in or boxed in. Some people might feel that their path is crystallized and concretized because of what they're doing for a living. They might say, I'd like to do something different, or I'd like to see something else to the, what I want to get at is we have to realize that just because we're good at something or we've done it for a long time, just because people rely on us, doesn't mean it's our responsibility. So if every human is here to individuate and learn how to become self-validating, the way I talk about it through my channeling work quite often is learning how to become the source of love for yourself. Somebody bringing something to the world in some scale, community or the world or workplace or something, might identify as a thing what he or she brings and might eventually grow out of that identity and either face continuing to do it because it's important or it's needed or they need me, or saying, I'm not responsible for this. I just want to point out that can be part of the process of evolution over time as you live in your 10th house. So two last things to finish this out. One thing is, I'm not going to do an exhaustive analysis, but if you have a planet in your 10th house, that part of your psyche works in that part of life. I guess it's part 1, A and B, and then part 2. So part 1A is if you have a planet in the 10th house or several, those parts of you seek expression in this public way based on achievement, ambition, bringing something to the world, building something and bringing it to a community or something. If you don't have a planet there, it doesn't mean you don't have, this comes up all the time when people are learning astrology. What if I don't have a planet in my 7th house? Does that mean I don't have relationships? I don't have a planet in my 5th house. Does that mean I can't have kids? No. So you have a sign on the cusp of the house, the midheaven in this case, 10th house, and a ruler of that. So there's kind of a chain of analysis, right, that's possible to understand more about the qualities. But the sign on the cusp of it, of the 10th house, the midheaven, colors how you approach that part of life. So if you do have a planet there, it may be more emphasized for you, or you may more directly seek such behaviors. But everybody's 10th house matters. And these questions I'm asking in this video apply to everybody, regardless of if you have a planet or not in the 10th house. Okay, that's part 1 and B, 1A and B. Part 2 is transits and progressions through the 10th house are important to keep an eye on too. Because let's say you don't have planets in the 10th house, but you have an outer planet slowly moving through that. So there's an emphasis or an inner planet progression that's moving through it. It might take years and years. With transits, we use typically, to really understand emphasis, we use Jupiter on out to Pluto. And I would use Eris sometimes too, much longer orbit than Pluto even. Progressions, you would use Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the angles. So inner planets and the angles for progressions. Jupiter on out for the transits. Transits are opportunities and things in the world that present opportunities where life asks us questions or people say, hey, why don't you try this? It's an external thing coming to activate us. So an outer planet transiting through the 10th house, you know, Jupiter could be the need to seize opportunity or have faith that tomorrow can be better and have optimism, right? The need for that. Saturn could be the work ethic. Focus on something specific and work hard on it now, right? Uranus could be you need to change things and individuate and create freedom and break free from convention. Neptune could be you got to surrender to something, to a higher truth. And Pluto could be a transformation of who you are in the world or what you want in the world or from the world. Anyway, those are opportunity-based things in 3D where you realize I would like to do that or to do it, you know, in the world and how you change in relation to the external world. Progressions are markers of internal development that will seek outward expression. I think of things brewing and percolating or simmering slowly with progressions. And then sometime you realize, wait a minute, I want to do this other thing, or I am going to add to my repertoire. I didn't know that was me. Suddenly it is me. Progressions represent this internal change that seeks in time outward expression. So some of those things can take years to move through any given house. And like with outer planets with like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, it's quite often that you might have 2 or 3 years of emphasis when the planet first crosses in. Let's say Pluto's going to be in your 10th house for 11 years. It may be that the first year and a half, 2 years, 3 years is where there's all the transformation or quite a lot of it. Anyway, so that's the end of this video. I hope it's helpful for you. I hope you're taking care of yourself and you are not touching your face or breathing on people. Take care of yourself and stay tuned for more. You can see what I'm up to at tdjacob.com. And if you're feeling heavy emotions, go to healingsuicide.com and read through that whole site. Take care.